Welcome to the Beautifully Intentional podcast, where I share stories to encourage you to live a more intentional life. Whether it's in your motherhood journey, your friendships, your 9-to-5 job, or pursuing just radical dreams. I believe that sometimes we can just get stuck in the mundane craziness of life, and all it takes is one encouraging word to give us hope to live for something greater. I share stories of living intentional through the simple things like self-care, clean spaces, parenthood, and going after your dreams. My hope is that at the end of every episode, there's a fire set deep within your soul that says, I can do this. And that maybe today is your day to find the beauty in the things that go unnoticed and start living a more intentional life. This is Cassandra Lau, and welcome to Beautifully Intentional. Welcome to episode 9 of the Beautifully Intentional podcast. Welcome back, everyone. The last 2 episodes, so the last 2 weeks, I talked a little bit about mom guilt and mom shaming, and that was like a little duo, if you will. And then I realized that I also have another episode about moms. So this one actually is specifically for moms. The other ones can be relatable if you're not a mom. This podcast isn't going to be about just moms. This episode is specifically for new moms. So it might not be relatable if you're not a new mom or if you don't ever plan on having kids. But this is still a good listen. And, if you know a new mom, maybe like you could recommend it or something. But anyway, this is my 5 tips for any new mom, because someone recently had asked me for my number 1 tip for any new mom, and I seriously had to rack my brain to come up with just one, because dang, motherhood is hard, and dang, motherhood is also rewarding, and there's so many emotions all in between. And I'm no motherhood expert, like by a long shot. But if I had to look any new mother in the eye and give her any words of advice, I narrowed it down to the top 5. These would be my top 5 best advice I can give. I've gone through motherhood with 3 drastically different kids. They're now 5, 7, and 8 at the time of this recording. So I'm past that baby stage, and these are the things that A, I've learned, or B, were great advice for me, or C, would have been nice to know then. So tip number 1, babies are born with unlimited amounts of grace and forgiveness. They don't hold grudges for anything. So receive it from them as a gift. And don't feel guilty for things that they've already forgiven you for. You know what I mean? These babies don't come with an instruction book. And so we're just guessing and checking our way through their lives, honestly, especially in that first year. I mean, there is plenty of times that we're going to do something wrong, probably on the daily if you're a parent like me. But feeling guilty over it only leads to more doubt, which then leads to comparison, because if you doubt yourself, then you're turning to other people and how they're doing things, and sometimes that's helpful, sometimes it's totally helpful, but feeling guilty for the errors that we make in that first year don't actually serve us. You know what I mean? Oh man, I actually have a really good story, and this isn't a new mom story. This is a veteran mom story, but it's because I'm still screwing up on the daily, but my kids still love me, which is my whole point to this, this tip. Okay, so the story, my son Jet, this just happened recently, and it's so great. So every single morning I would go into his room, and his bottom drawer, where all of his pajamas are, would be open, and all of his pajamas would be on the floor. And for the first couple of days that I started noticing this, I'm like, that's so annoying, whatever. And I would just put his pajamas back in there, close the drawer, no big deal. Well, after a week or 2 of this happening, I'm finally Jet, you have to put your clothes away. You can't take all of your pajamas out of the drawer just to find what you want and then leave them on the floor. And he was like, I don't do that. I'm like, okay, surely he does. Obviously he does. So I moved on. I kept going in there. I'm like, Jet, your clothes are on the floor again. You have to put them away. So he'd put them away, and he's like, I didn't take them out. And after a week of every day me going in there, I'm like, Jet, your pajamas are on the floor again. You can't take your pajamas out and leave them on the floor. He's like, I didn't do it. I don't do it. He's 4 years old. And I'm like, who else would possibly be doing it? So I call in all the other kids. I'm like, Zuri, come in here. I'm like, did you take Jet's pajamas out and throw them on the floor? She's like, no. I'm like, didn't think so. Move along. Amelie, come on in here. Did you take his pajamas out and leave them on the floor? And she's like, no, why would I do that? I'm like, exactly. Move along. I'm like, Jet, it had to be you. It had to have been you. There's nobody else in this house is going to take your pajamas out and throw them on the floor. They're your pajamas. And so, like, lying in our house is a huge no-no. Like, you can make mistakes. You can really royally screw up. A lot of times we just use natural consequences as discipline. So it's like, you're gonna feel it. If you make a mistake or you screw up or you do something on purpose, you're gonna feel it because there's gonna be a natural consequence. But like, lying is like, oh no, like, you do not lie in my house. Like, I have grace for a lot of things, but like, lying, I can't stand. So, so I'm giving him this whole spiel, like, looking him in the eyes, like, don't you dare lie to me. It is not okay to lie. Like, honesty is one of the most important, like, attributes. Like, you can make mistakes, but you do not lie to me. Like, you need to be honest right now. Did you take your clothes out? And he's like, no. And I'm like, Jet, you are lying to me. I'm like telling him, I'm like, you're lying to me because nobody else in the house is doing it. And it's like this every single day. He's like, I'm not doing it. And he's so like, he's such a good kid. And so I'm like, you need to be honest. He's like, okay, I guess I did. I didn't do it, but I guess I did, because he just wanted to make it right. So we put his pajamas away. We close the drawer. The next day, he walks into his room and he's like, Mom, come in here. And I go in there and he's like, my pajamas are on the floor and I did not touch them. And I know that he didn't touch them because the night before we were out somewhere. So I put his pajamas on in the car. So I know that he didn't like put his pajamas on that night. And I'm like, what the heck? How is this happening? I am so confused. So I open the drawer right above that one. And I open it and our cat is in there. And I'm like, no, there's no way this is the cat. There's no way the cat is opening the bottom drawer, taking out all the pajamas to climb in and get up to the second drawer. There's no way. So I'm like, that's really weird. It might be the cat. The next day, I caught the cat red-handed opening the drawer and pawing out every single pair of pajamas to climb in that drawer, to climb up into the next one and sleep. Like, oh my gosh. So anyway, I felt so bad because not only did I get mad at him, I'm like telling him he's a dishonest person. I'm giving him this whole lecture on honesty, and here he was being honest the whole time. And you know what? I took like ownership of my actions. I apologized. I'm like, I am so sorry. I misunderstood the whole scenario. You were right. I was wrong. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. And he forgave me. And like, he still loves me. And he doesn't hold that against me. He's not walking around thinking like my mom is a terrible mom because she blamed the cat's mishap on me. Like, he has so much grace and so much forgiveness. And I feel like in that first year, babies are the same way. Like, they're not keeping a record of your wrongs. Like, anytime you do something and you mess up, they're not thinking like, oh my gosh, my mom is such a screw up. They're like, they are so happy every single time you feed them, every single time you smile at them, every single time you hold them. Like, they're just, all they do is just ooze love for you. They have so much grace. They have so much forgiveness. And mom guilt is a thief. So give yourself grace. Okay, so that was tip number 1. Tip number 2. When you are in the thick of it, people like to say, oh, it goes by so fast, which I personally find annoying because it is not going fast when you have been up all freaking night for days and weeks and months. Like, it's not going fast when toddlers are throwing tantrums. It's not going by fast when kids are barfing all night. And like, that doesn't help at all. So instead, I like to say, this isn't permanent. Like whatever hard season of motherhood you find yourself in, remember that it isn't permanent. Days are long, long as heck. But each hard season has an end. Like reminding myself that this flu isn't permanent. I can get through this because this isn't permanent. The barfing all night, the fevers, it's going to go away. It actually has an ending. And I can get through this tantrum because my kid is only going to be 2 years old for 1 year. It's hard. Like it's hard no matter what. The days are long, but the toddler years aren't permanent. Like those sleepless nights, they're not permanent. And like, I just like that phrasing over, it goes by so fast, because it doesn't feel like it's going by fast. Therefore, that phrasing is unrelatable. But the mindset of this isn't permanent, that gives us hope. Like, I always like to use the phrase, and I talked about this in one of the previous parenting or like mother episodes, but like they're not going to go to college, ... like they're not going to go to college waking up every hour. They aren't going to go to college still wetting the bed at night. At least I hope not. They aren't going to go to college throwing a tantrum on the floor. You know what I mean? So does it go by fast? Yes. But at the end, you will see that. Like at the end, you'll get to have that perspective. But while you're in the thick of it, there's no way to see that right now. So just remember that when you're in the thick of it, that this season isn't permanent. And yes, it's going by slow, but it's not permanent. It has an ending. So tip number 3, do not forget about your needs. Like, you can't pour water from an empty well. It's been said 1,000,000 times, but I don't even care because it's still truth. Babies are the most draining little things on the planet. So every flipping day, every single day, I want you to find a way to fill up your well so that you can supply as much water that is needed from you throughout the day. Like, because man, those little suckers, they drain a crap ton of water. So fill that well up. Self-care in this season is just as important as keeping your baby alive. Like taking care of yourself in every way, taking care of your physical needs, your mental needs, your emotional needs. Like I did a whole episode on self-care. It's in the beginning, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6, I don't know. I should probably know these things before I start recording, but you'll find it. So go back and listen to it if you need to. But the main point being, it doesn't necessarily matter what it is that you find caring for yourself as long as you're consistent with it. So make it a priority. It's going to look different in every season. And in that, like that first year with those babies, like they're so all consuming that it's not going to look like, oh, I get to go to the gym for an hour. I get to get my nails done once a week. I get to get a massage once a week. I get to buy whatever I want. It's not going to look like that. But man, pay attention to daily choosing something that you will consistently do for yourself. Even if that means you're going to commit to 10 minutes of meditation every day. You will find 10 minutes in your day to meditate, or like just being consistent with paying attention to the way that your hormones are fluctuating and the way that you are mentally and emotionally feeling, and being consistent with like, if you're feeling that postpartum depression or you're feeling down, that you are committed to yourself and to your mental health and your emotional health, that you will seek help. Like whatever it is in that first year, like man, just pay attention to yourself because it's so easy to forget about yourself altogether. So there's that. Number 4, don't do anything while your baby sleeps that you can do while they're awake. Meaning, if you can clean while they're awake, then do not do it while they're asleep. Do something that you can't do, like take a bubble bath or read a book or a nap, or just sit in perfect silence. And this tip actually I stole from Martin Smith. He was the lead singer of Delirious. His wife, Anna Smith, they had 6 kids, and her husband traveled the world doing music. And she wrote a book about like her life being the band wife and stay-at-home mom, the whole thing. And so I read the book when my husband was traveling, and I had a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a newborn. can I just take a moment? What was I actually thinking? Like, I still think I have a little PTSD from that season because, oh my gosh, a newborn, a 2-year-old, and a 3-year-old, like what? But anyway, so I read her book, and that was one of the things that hit me like a ton of bricks, and I applied every single day. Like, I'm terrible at like reading books and remembering like the whole thing. I'm really good about finding one thing that speaks to me, and that thing I'll remember for 10 years. So yeah, I read this book about, I don't know, like 6-7 years ago. And that one tip, I was like, oh my gosh, it's brilliant. So I still do it to this day. It's so easy to save cleaning for when your baby is asleep because it's so much easier. But if you can find a way to do it while they're awake so that when they're asleep, you can drink hot coffee or read uninterrupted, it's so worth it. Like when my kids were little, I would make them dinner and then I would put them to bed and then I would eat, because eating uninterrupted was something that I missed and I craved. So that became my routine. And you know what? Like, if you have a toddler or you have a baby, then you know you don't get to eat hot meals. So eating a hot meal was so important to me. So that was one of the best changes that I made. So yeah, don't do things while they're asleep that you can do while they're awake. Okay, number 5. Last but most certainly not the least, and actually probably should be number 1. Like if I had to narrow down like one tip, I don't know, it's so hard. I feel like they're all 5 equal, but this one is super important. Ask for help. Like, girl, it takes an army, a village, a tribe. It takes all of society. Like, we are never, ever, ever meant to do this motherhood thing alone. Like, you need advice, ask for help. You need a break, ask for help. I asked for so much help in the beginning, and because I didn't have family that could help a ton. Like, my sisters worked, my mom couldn't help, my in-laws kind of had already helped raise grandkids, and they were going through their own thing, so they weren't in the position to help a ton. My in-law, like sisters and stuff, they work or they're far. I didn't have a ton of family that was just regularly ready and able to help. I didn't have like a retired mom who was just sitting around begging me to have kids. Like, that was not the case for me. But I had a solid group of friends that could pitch in. And so when my husband traveled, I had 2 best friends, and they would come over every single day after work, and they would do the whole nighttime routine with me. So one would cook dinner while one would do bath time while I would clean. And anytime I needed medical advice, I would call a friend who's a nurse. Anytime I needed sleep training advice, I would call a friend who had excellent sleepers. Mothers have gone before you. They have wisdom to pass on to you. And new mothers are being born every day, and they'll need your wisdom. You are qualified to do this work. And with every single season that you make it through, you are now qualified to give advice. So you will at some point be in that position where there's a new mom behind you, and you'll get to say oh man, I was there. This is what helped me, And so do not be afraid to ask for help. I feel like a lot of times we can make us feel like we can't, we're not good enough if we ask for help. But I'm telling you, you are qualified to do this work. You are qualified to raise your kids. And we were just never intended to do it alone. So reach out, never hesitate to ask for help. So yeah, I guess that's it. So those are my 5 top best advice tips for any new mom. There is so much more, but this should get you through your day. So I hope this was helpful. And I think that's all. All right, you got this, girl. Have a good day. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. And if this episode encouraged you in any way, would you please do me a solid and leave a review, subscribe, screenshot, share with all your friends. I would just so deeply appreciate it. Reviews and shares help spread the word, and maybe there's someone out there that you know who needs to hear this that I don't necessarily know, and this is the best way to do that. So let's try to get this thing rolling off the ground. Wouldn't that be awesome? You can find me on Instagram at just Cassandra Lau. That is where I hang out every day, and you can kind of just see me in my more real life and laugh at me in my stories because, I mean, they can be comical sometimes. So I hope you have a good day and take care.